today's speaker, Mr. Shishir Mehrotra. He is currently the CEO of Grammarly, and over the past 25 plus years, he has helped build some of the tools many of us use every day. This includes developing core products at Microsoft and driving exponential growth as the Chief Product and Technology Officer at YouTube. Then, 10 years ago, he co-founded Coda. Think of it as the G Suite integrated into one powerful platform. As someone who has gone through the journey himself, he will share how to take concepts and transform them into billion-dollar products. Please join me in welcoming him today to speak about the process of turning ideas into reality and the underappreciated yet critical work that happens behind the scenes.
All right, thank you, Arush. It's a lot of fun. I'm really excited to be here. I guess I get to be the first speaker, so we'll see how we can kick things off this morning. I was thinking a little bit about what to talk about today, and I decided to talk a bit about how to turn ideas into reality. And I'll give you some inspiration for that in just a minute. But first, maybe just a little bit about me. Arush covered it pretty well, but I am currently the CEO at Grammarly. Who here is a Grammarly user? Okay, all right, you'll hear a little bit more about Grammarly in a bit. Before that, I was the founder and CEO of Coda. Before that, I spent a long time at Google, most of that time running the YouTube group. Was at Microsoft before that. I started my first company called Centrata out of college. And I went to college at MIT out on the East Coast. But of course, the real reason I'm here today is that I have two wonderful daughters. Both Los Altos High School, well, one is an alum and the other one is a student, Ria, who's here somewhere, I can't see her. So we're going to talk a bit about turning ideas into reality. So I'm gonna date myself with a book that I'm guessing nobody here has read. Anybody read this book? Malcolm Fernald? Okay, I don't think the series is very popular anymore. I'll tell you why. So this was one of my favorite series when I was growing up. There's a series of books about this kid, Alvin Fernald, and it's a really fun set of books. Every book, he invents something new, and then something, and it's always really exciting, and he's got lots of energy, and then something tragically goes wrong. And at the end of every book, he sort of apologizes to his parents, his teachers, puts the invention away, and goes back to his regular life. And I always found these books really fun, but also really disappointing. Every lesson seemed to end with, it's really hard to turn ideas into reality. So the way I think about what I've been able to experience through my career is I've had the chance to watch some really exciting products go from really simple ideas into big realities. And in each case, I've had a chance to see some somewhat unexpected lessons on how that happens. So what I thought I'd do today is I picked off 3 stories, one from each of the last 3 companies I worked on, of how a sort of simple idea turned into a reality in a surprising way. All right. So we're going to start talking about YouTube. All right, who here is a YouTube fan? Okay, that was easy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about YouTube, but I'm going to talk about YouTube in a very early experience. So I joined YouTube in 2008. As context, YouTube was started in 2005, and had just been acquired into Google. And for folks that I'm sure most of you weren't even born then, so won't remember this, but YouTube was seen as a bit of a mistake. So at the time, Google had bought a number of companies, the products that would eventually end up becoming things like Google Maps, Gmail, the ad system. Those were all companies that Google had acquired. And YouTube was the first one that Google acquired that seemed like it might not work. The company was acquired for $1.6 billion, and we were losing almost $1 billion a year on top of that. We were known for having lots of users, but also grainy videos, lots of lawsuits, lots and lots of different problems. But if you sat in one of our staff meetings in those early days in 2008, that's actually not what you'd hear us talking about. The number one topic in our staff meeting was almost always what we call the modern family question. So I'll tell you a little bit about what happened here and the lesson I took away from it. So here's the modern family question was, YouTube was at the time, and actually still is, the world's second largest search engine. Yes, first is Google, second most searched product in the world is still YouTube. And so every week we would look at our search traffic and see what was trending and what wasn't. And every week, one of the top 5 queries was for a show called Modern Family. Anybody here watch Modern Family? Yeah, I think it's still somewhat popular. So in 2008, it was really popular. It was #1 show on TV. Everybody wanted to watch it. There was one really big problem. We didn't have Modern Family on YouTube. So we gave really crappy answers to this simple query. So there's a big debate emerging what we should do about it. And the team had basically divided in half. So half the company thought we should link out. So it happened that ABC.com, who own Modern Family, had decided to post every episode of Modern Family online available for free. And I know this may seem pretty common nowadays, but in those days, it actually wasn't very common to have TV shows posted online. And so this is a big deal. #1 show on TV is posted online for free. And so half of the team at YouTube had decided we should just link out. When somebody asks this question, we should then send them to abc.com. We were now owned by Google. It seemed like do the right thing by the user was the philosophy. And so maybe that's what we should do. The other half of the team thought this was a terrible idea. And their view was, if we link out to abc.com, then we'll just link out everywhere, and all that will be left on YouTube is content that doesn't deserve to be anywhere else on the internet. It'll be the beginning of a big drain. So it was a really complex discussion. Every week we would talk about it. We were trying to do a deal with abc.com, and none of it was really working. So every week we'd come back, we talk about it, postpone until the next meeting, and couldn't make a decision. So after weeks and weeks of this, we decided we had to find a way through this question, and we decided to have an all-day meeting. So we hosted the group of the executive team. We went out to Half Moon Bay, and we said we're not leaving till we come back with a decision on the Modern Family question. And I got assigned the task of preparing the discussion. So I'm preparing the night before, and I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be so hard. We've talked about this topic dozens of times. Everybody already knows what they want to do. How am I possibly going to create a discussion where we can come up with a different approach for what we decide here? And the night before, I happened to read a paper from another team. There's a team at Google running a new product we call Google Shopping. And that team had just done a big study surveying people that were choosing Amazon versus Google Shopping. And the team was really, really surprised. Amazon was pretty small then, but still Amazon was kicking Google Shopping's butt. And all the research said the same thing. People would come back and say, the Google Shopping team expected them to say they would pick Google because Google was indexing everything on Amazon plus the rest of the internet. So if you could shop in one place that was totally comprehensive, why would you ever go to a place that had less of the products? But everybody who used Amazon said that they actually valued the consistency over the comprehensiveness. They valued that they understood how the product pages work, they understand how the reviews work, they understand how returns work, the products always showed up on time. And what we heard over and over again was that they preferred a consistent experience over a comprehensive one. So we decided we're going to have this discussion about the Modern Family question. We said we're not going to talk about Modern Family. Instead, we're going to talk about a different question. We said in 10 years, will online video be more about consistency or comprehensiveness? And this turned into a really useful discussion. It took us about an hour, and we all came to the same conclusion that online video was probably more likely to be about consistency than comprehensiveness. So we're now 17 years after that. And I think this turned out to be right. If you think about the way online video works, online video went from being quite small to being very large, and it's everywhere, but there is no one site that has all of online video. In fact, it's actually quite important that some of it lives on Netflix, some of it lives on TikTok, some of it lives on Instagram, some of it lives on YouTube. And we came to a decision that we viewed that online video was more likely to be like Amazon, where consistency mattered more than comprehensiveness. And that we should therefore not link out to abc.com. So we made a decision. YouTube still doesn't do that. So if you come to YouTube and you search for something, they don't have it. They don't send you somewhere else. They assume you'll figure that out on your own. We also made a number of other decisions. So it used to be that, these days when you go to YouTube, you get a consistent video player. At the time, it didn't look like that. Every different content provider could provide us with a different video player. So you loaded, and a new app would load inside of YouTube. And so we stopped doing that as well. Maybe one of the more famous examples is when the iPhone came out. The iPhone actually didn't have a store. I know that's hard to believe, but when the iPhone came out, Apple built every app for the iPhone. And they mostly built them around all the Apple services. So they built a calendar, they built mail, they built an alarm clock, and they decided they really wanted one for YouTube. So Apple actually built the YouTube app for the iPhone, except they couldn't keep up. So we had hundreds of developers working on YouTube. They had 2 developers working on the YouTube version of the iPhone version of YouTube. So I drove down to Cupertino, met with the Apple team, and said, we're going to take this back. We're going to run the mobile version of YouTube ourselves. And they replied, they said, but I don't understand. If you do that, we're going to have to uninstall it from everybody's phones, and you're going to have to get them to reinstall it. And I said, yes, I know, but we value consistency over comprehensiveness. We'd rather be on less phones with a consistent experience than be on more phones with an inconsistent experience. And so we made that hard choice. So this technique ended up getting a name. It's called eigenquestions. So eigenquestions, a made-up word. For those of you that are going through linear algebra, you'll recognize the term from eigenvectors, but it doesn't really matter. Eigenquestion is a term we use for the question that when answered answers all the other questions. And it's sort of an interesting way to think about when you're facing a decision. I'm sure you've each faced this at different times, where you have 10 different questions you need to answer, and how do you order them? How do you decide which question you start with? And sometimes you'll start with the one that's the most urgent. You'll start with the one that looks like the most serious. In this case, the reason it was called a modern family question was that we were trying to do a deal with ABC. But it often turns out that if you take that list of 10 questions and you work your way down the list, maybe question number 6 is actually the one that if you answered it, it would answer all 10 of the other questions as well. And you need to be able to find what that question is. So this pattern is something that we got really good at. We actually ended up turning it into an exercise that we would interview for and we would teach. So I'll give you a very quick example of what that feels like in an interview. So this is a question. I no longer use this question for interviews, so I can share it here with you. But the question goes like this, and I've probably given this question thousands of times. So a group of scientists have invented a teleportation device. It's a little bit like the one in Star Trek, for anyone who's familiar with Star Trek. You're responsible for bringing it to market. What do you do? And so I'll generally ask this question and I'll just sit quiet. And I'll just watch the person start to ask questions. And generally they'll start asking questions about the device. And they'll say, sometimes they'll ask questions like, how big is it? How small is it? How fast does it work? Does it destroy the person and recreate the person? Is it safe? And I won't answer any of the questions. And I'll just say, well, why don't you give me your full list, and then we'll go through your list of questions. And by the time we're a few minutes in, they'll have a board full of 20 questions. And then I'll ask the second part of the question, and I'll say, it turns out this group of scientists is really annoyed with all your questions, and they've decided they're only going to answer 2 of your questions. Which 2 would you like to ask? And it's a form of understanding eigenquestions. Just to give you an example, I've gotten lots of responses to this over the years. But this was one of my favorite ones. This was a person who said, okay, if I'm only allowed to ask 2 questions about this device, and based on that I have to give you a whole business plan for how this is going to work, they landed on these 2 questions. So one question is the one on the horizontal axis is, how safe is the device? And they say, all I really want to know is it safe enough for humans or not safe enough for humans? And then on the vertical axis, they said, is the device more costly to purchase or to operate? In business terms, it's called OpEx versus CapEx. So the top of that is something that's more costly to operate, meaning it's really cheap to purchase, but every time you use it, you have to pay a lot of money. And at the bottom is things where it costs a lot to purchase, but each time you use it doesn't cost a lot of money. And based on this, they said, well, if you just give me these 2 answers, I can tell you what I would do. So for example, if you told me the top left, actually I'll start on the top right. If you told me the top right, you said it's safe enough for humans, and it's pretty cheap to deploy, but very expensive to operate, then I would put it in every place it possibly could, and I'd create human fax machines. And the business would look just like human fax machines. Or for the bottom right, you'd say, it's safe enough for humans, but it's really, really expensive to get them deployed, then I'd probably put them in all the same places that I'd put airports. And we put them in centers where a lot of people live, and then hope that people would come and get rides. So I think this is a super interesting technique, one you can definitely practice on your own. But one of the main lessons I've learned through this experience and through many others is that in a lot of situations, trying to get ideas into reality, it's not really about finding the right answer. It's often about finding the right question. So as you think about what you want to build, start with, are you asking the right question? Okay, let's go to number 2. Let's talk a little bit about Coda. So Coda is the company I started after leaving YouTube. It was started on a number of different observations, but the biggest one was that we felt the world of documents hadn't evolved in a long time. There's a famous picture here. So on the left-hand side, that's from 1979. That's a product called VisiCalc. It was the very first spreadsheet. On the right-hand side there, that's Excel. And one of the things you'll notice is they don't look that different. That actually the first products we started with in the document space were all pretty similar to what we start today. There's this one, VisiCalc. There's another one called WordStar. There's another one called Harvard Graphics. And I think if I took anyone in this room and put you in front of a computer, admittedly an old computer from the 1970s, and I said figure it out, you could probably figure it out just fine. Documents, spreadsheets, and presentations hadn't really changed, and at that point, in 30 years. So we decided that it was time for change. We decided it was time to try something a little bit different. And this process was turned out to be very challenging. There's a few pictures here from the early days of Coda. So the top left, that was our first logo and first name. So we didn't actually call the company Coda at first. We called it Krypton. The goal was to give people superpowers. You'll see on the bottom left, that was actually our first board meeting. We did all our board meetings out in the open with where all the engineers sat, so that we could go through product demonstration after product demonstration. On the right-hand side there, that was actually the first Coda doc. It looks very little like the current Coda docs. But one of the things we did is we had to constantly take what felt familiar and look at it a little bit differently. The documents actually have to look exactly the same. One of the first concepts we came up with in Coda was the idea that documents should have multiple pages, something that we felt was really important from spreadsheets. Maybe we could bring that to documents as well. And we went from step to step to step and invented many different parts of documents. So this is what Coda looks like now. It's an interactive surface. It has multiple pages in a single document. It's a single surface, so you don't have to decide document or spreadsheet or presentation or application. You can all do it in one place. It's interactive, so you can have building blocks that can really help you build things that feel like full applications. So this is now used by millions of people around the world, tens of thousands of different teams. Maybe some fun examples. The New York Times uses Coda. Snap runs on Coda. Maybe a really fun example is the Sphere. If anybody's seen that big ball in Las Vegas, that's all programmed in Coda. But it really required a different approach for thinking about product development. And the main lesson I took from this was the idea of right versus familiar. And this has become a bit of a mantra for the Coda team, is that in many cases where you go look at when you go look at a product, you'll look at how it works today and just assume that that must be the right way to do it. Because we've been living with it for the last 30 or 40 years, and so there's no reason to think it could be any different. And I think in a lot of the cases when you sit down to invent something new, you have to be willing to look at a product and see it a little bit differently. And that's one of my main lessons from the Coda experience. All right, I have one last example, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about Grammarly. And this time we're going to talk a little bit about a transformation that is in progress, one that we're going through right now, and it's maybe a somewhat unexpected one. So for folks that are maybe less familiar with Grammarly, Grammarly was built about 16 years ago, started by a team in Ukraine, and now serves about 40 million daily active users, pretty big number. We have about 50,000 businesses and teams, does about 100 billion LLM calls a week. It's on par with about what you get from ChatGPT. It's a very big AI platform. But we think one of our thought processes for what's happening next with Grammarly is that we actually think Grammarly is misunderstood. Most people would say Grammarly is about grammar, which seems like a totally reasonable conclusion. But our view is that Grammarly is actually not about grammar. Grammar is the original AI agent. And I know the term agent is maybe a little bit of a new term. The way we think about agents is agents feel like digital humans that can help you anywhere. So one way to think about that is the analogy we use is that Grammarly feels more like an AI superhighway. And the core technology we built at Grammarly actually has very little to do with grammar. It has to do with what we call presence. So if you think about what Grammarly does, when you use Grammarly, is we can read your screen, we can annotate it and draw lines on it in a way that doesn't disrupt you, doesn't disrupt the application, and then we can make changes on your behalf. And by the way, we do that in about 500,000 different applications. We can do it on every website, we can do it in every desktop application, we even have a set of applications for phones, so we can do it on your iPhones and your Android phones as well. And one way to think about that is that technology allows us to bring AI, bring a digital human, right next to you everywhere you work. So one of the analogies we use for it is like we've built a superhighway that allows us to bring AI right to the end user, but there's one big problem: we only run one car on that highway today, and that's the car with your high school grammar teacher in it. And for everyone here in English class, that probably seems super valuable, having your high school grammar teacher everywhere you go. It's obviously led to a lot of different usage, but it turns out you could use the exact same road for bringing many other agents to you as well. So imagine a world where you sit down and instead of feeling like you just have your grammar teacher next to you, imagine all your teachers could be next to you. Why can't your history teacher and chemistry teacher do the same thing? Or maybe if you're a professional, what if you could pull information on any customer that you're talking to and have a little underline that shows up there as well? Or maybe if you say to someone, I want to meet Tuesday at 7 p.m., it should come through and underline that and say, actually, you can't do that, you have a game at that time. What would it feel like if all of those different products could live on top of the same platform we built? So we're going through a pretty dramatic rethinking of Grammarly. I'll give you a little sneak preview of what this is going to look like. So some of this is going to launch next month, but we're changing Grammarly to feel more like a platform of agents. So what you'll notice on the right-hand side there, we sometimes call that the agent bench. That makes Grammarly, what we currently consider Grammarly, just one of many agents. So in this world, you can go and add all the different ones you might want. Maybe you want one for a specific language, maybe you want one for a specific class, maybe you want one that connects to a specific system. And now you can have experiences where each of those assistants can help you in maybe different ways. We shipped a couple of these a few weeks ago. For example, we shipped one that's really popular with students called Paraphraser. So this in particular allows you to take something that might sound more childish and make it more adult, maybe something that sounds more robotic and make it feel more human. We shipped another one we call the expert panel. This is one that takes what you've written, instead of asking your grammar teacher's viewpoint on it, we'll go ask a set of professionals and pretend like they're reviewing your work just like your grammar teacher would. The key lesson I took out of this one is, in a lot of cases, the innovation you want is hiding in plain sight. I don't think most people would have thought of Grammarly as being a platform for running other agents and experiences. But if you look at the technology a little bit differently, sometimes you can reframe it and get to a completely new innovation. So those are the three examples I want to start with today. At YouTube, we learned a lot about eigen questions, the art of asking the right question. At Coda, we learned about how to take something that was familiar and pretend for a moment you could imagine the world in a different way. And with Grammarly, we're taking something that has existed for a long time and is seen in a particular way and rethinking that technology to work a little bit differently. Those are the three examples I want to share with you today. Hopefully that inspires some good ideas that you can turn into reality, and maybe some questions you can ask today as well. Right. Okay, how do we want to do questions? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Won't have questions.
The brave early morning questions.
There's the stickers.
So I wanted to ask, when this kind of like help out with general cheating and like academic integrity violations in school. Also, it kind of makes people pretty lazy because it gives you like literally everything in one area.
Okay, very good question. So we should talk a little bit about, and I think it's a very appropriate question for this group, is how do I think about education and the role of teachers and the role of learning. So maybe just to give a couple examples, before I get to Grammarly, let me tell you a little bit about YouTube. So when I got to YouTube, that year, 2008, was the first year that my college, MIT, put every lecture online for free. And we thought, this was the end of colleges. Like, why would you ever go to college if every lecture, I mean, you can still see it, every lecture I attended is available online for free. And of course, that didn't end up being the end of colleges. It changed how colleges operate. And in fact, it greatly improved colleges because now college was much more about the experience with the professors and the other students than about just the lecture materials. I think what we're seeing right now with AI is another step in changing how we think about education. And I think it's a really exciting one, but a really important one as well. The other thing I'd say is when calculators came out, there was a lot of fear that students would never learn how to use, never know how to do math again. And I think it's this weird dichotomy of, on one side, we really want students to know how to do math. But the other side, calculators do exist. And so there's a lot of cases where you don't have to do it, you can use the calculator as well. And so I think it's really important for students and for teachers to figure out the right times to do each piece of that. And in some cases, you want, and I'm sure you guys go through many classes and exams where the teacher annoyingly tells you can't use calculators here, and you say, why not? Well, that's because they're trying to teach you a basic skill that you can take forward. There's other classes and other times where they're going to tell you the exact opposite. Use every tool you possibly can, because when you get to the real world, you're going to use every tool you possibly need. And so I view it similarly. So as we're building out this new platform, we're building it with a lot of controls for teachers that allows two things. One, it's going to allow teachers and educators to decide when to allow each different tool set. And say, in this case, I'd really prefer you not to use any such agents or assistants because I really want you to learn. Or other cases where I want you to mimic what it's going to be like in the real world and use every tool available. But the other thing it allows them to do is to transform themselves into being those teachers. So right now, I'm sure a lot of your experiences feel like you learn a lesson, you do some homework, a week later you turn it in, you get back some feedback. Imagine that every teacher could be with you every moment of when you're working and help get you on the right track before you turn in your homework and potentially get a bad grade. So I think, like every technology, there's ways that it's going to create opportunities for both good and for mischief. And finding that balance, I think, is really important. For the educators in the room, I think the idea is to hand people that control and that opportunity. And for the students here, I'd encourage you to decide for yourselves how you decide to learn. It's very important to be able to use all these new tools. It's also really important to know the fundamentals of every different thing you're learning as well. That's a great question.
Is the name going to stay Grammarly, or is there going to be like a remodel like Meta or Alphabet?
Great question. We are renaming the company. The new name will launch in about 6 weeks. So you'll get it very soon.
Wait, really?
The name Grammarly will become a sub-brand. So the analogy to Meta, Alphabet, so on is important. So if you know and love the name Grammarly, that will continue. But it'll become one of the products on the platform instead of the only product on the platform. And we decided we needed to broaden the name of the company to be able to do that. So you'll hear that soon.
When it comes to training the Grammarly agents, I saw that you had some more specific people like authors or talk show hosts. How do you go about training those agents to emulate a real person?
That's a great question. I don't think that's a very early experiment we've done right now. I think in some cases we do it with just using the published work. In other cases, we're doing it directly with those people. So sometimes those are famous people. So for example, we're working with an author right now named Kim Scott, who wrote a famous book called Radical Candor. It's all about how you communicate with people with directness. In other cases, we're doing it with very specific individuals. So for example, we work with a lot of colleges and universities. And one of the projects we're working on, for example, at Arizona State University, is we work with each of the professors to build digital versions of themselves. And so in some of those cases, they can hand us things like the public materials, but in many cases, we need to actually watch them work to be able to do it. And so one of the techniques we've been using is we'll watch the professor grade papers and give responses as a way to train the digital professor that can then go help the rest of the students at scale. But I think how do you train agents like that is a really interesting problem.
How do you go about combating the environmental implications of such a large-scale AI platform?
You mean you're thinking about climate change, or you're thinking about something else?
Yeah, climate change.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. I think that maybe if you think about energy usage in the world, we're going through one of the most massive changes in how energy is used that we've ever seen before. There's a massive 3 or 4 orders of magnitude change over the course of the last 50-ish years. And in the last 2 years, we've seen a very similar amount of change happen, but compressed into a very small period. So maybe I'll answer on 2 levels. For Grammarly itself, actually, we run very efficiently. So we do about 100 billion LLM calls a week. Maybe just to put that in context, that's across about 40 million daily active users. That means we do a couple thousand AI calls a day per person. So I'm sure many people here use products like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or so on. For those products, if they do like 4 or 5 questions per day per person, that would seem like a lot. If they did 100, that would seem like a real lot. We do thousands per day per person. The way we do that is we run much smaller scaled models because we need to be able to do it very, very fast. Because every time you press a key, every time you load a new page, we have to be able to run an AI model that can decide what to suggest for you very quickly. So we actually do it with a tiny amount of compute compared to what products like OpenAI do. OpenAI is spending billions of dollars per year to drive their compute. We're actually doing it profitably. So we make enough money back in what you do that we don't have to actually invest capital in it. So for Grammarly in particular, I don't think we're making that problem significantly worse. That said, the question you asked is a very important one. I'm a technology optimist. I think that sometimes when you cause a problem, the new solutions start to present themselves. The scale of what we're seeing out of the energy transformation means the types of climate change solutions people are working on are a lot more exciting now. So if anybody's interested, there's now a number of great companies working on carbon sequestration, which is you can go pull carbon back out of the air. There's other companies working, there's one in particular that I know is getting very close to making nuclear fusion work. If that works, we're going to see a very small glass of water be able to power entire data centers. So we've definitely caused a problem. We're about to use a lot more energy than the world is used to using. That has, not only could we cause problems for the environment, we can also run out of energy. That causes wars, that causes lots of other problems. But I also think some of the best technologists in the world are working on it. And hopefully that'll be some of you soon as well, to go solve those problems in maybe ways that people didn't think were possible before. Are we at time? All right. Thank you very much.